Is liberty dying where you live? Escape to Keene at freekeene.com.
Regulation and taxation of short-term rental businesses is a way of trying to, from my perspective, level the playing field on lodging businesses like mine, an inn that is a formal business, does short-term rentals, and is subject to all of the rules and regulations about being a public accommodation. So we are subject to all sorts of public health and employment responsibilities, and we pay rooms and meals tax. The short-term rental business that has built up over the past, almost decade now, are platform website businesses like AirBnB, VRBO, HomeAway, FlipKey, and I think there are probably another half dozen. Those are businesses where someone who has a building on their property or wants to rent out their house when they are away, or they have a second home and they're renting it out, or they want to rent out a room in their house, a bedroom in their house. And they can do that from one of those platforms. If you search Airbnb and New Hampshire, you will find hundreds of properties that are being marketed. Some of them that have been doing second home business, second home rentals for a number of years, but now have migrated to these platforms. Some of them, even like my business, we don't do it, but others like me do, also put their lodging availability on the short-term rental sites. My bill does not intend on impacting local municipality or town zoning ordinances at all. I think that's up to the localities to decide what it is they want to do relative to the impact of Airbnb and these kinds of places on their residential communities. If you research this issue at all, you'll see that other municipalities around the country are dealing with the fact that there are apartment buildings where people are buying apartments strictly for the short-term rental business, and residents in those buildings and in those communities are complaining that they're no longer zoned as or defined as they are supposed to be as residential areas. But a place or the area like mine in the Mount Washington Valley may have no negative impact from people renting their home, their extra building, their tree house through Airbnb. It may not negatively impact that residential area at all. So I think even though there is a selectmen's meeting tonight in Conway to begin to take up the issue of Airbnb and those kinds of rentals and how it's impacting their neighborhoods, that's something for towns and municipalities to deal with, and not the state, I think. But at the state level, I would ask that we level the playing field, at least in terms of requiring these people who choose to rent through these platforms to pay rooms and meals tax and register as businesses. So that's what this bill attempts to do. It may need a little tweaking in terms of its language, and I would be happy to work with the subcommittee on that. But my intent for the bill is to require business registration, since these places that are renting out are indeed businesses, and for the platforms like Airbnb, VRBO, etc., to make accessible to the DRA their listing of people who are renting through their platform. so that DRA can then follow up as they would with my business or any other taxpayer to see whether or not taxes are being paid. I've talked with DRA a little bit about this, and I believe that there are people from the DRA here to answer questions, although they have just started to look at this bill as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see a card here.
There may be somebody here, at least they said they would be. Yes, thank you.
Monitoring. All right, so obviously, for the record, for the committee members, I have a extreme conflict because I am a home away renter, and I will be filing the form in which allows me to participate in this discussion by stating publicly that I have a conflict.
But also, you're already registered and you already pay rooms and meals tax.
So theoretically, I am not who you're trying to chase.
Exactly.
Okay, because you look down line 27 on the first page, that I am absolutely in compliance, that on an annual basis, I take out this nice colorful form they send me each year. It's nice that they don't charge me the $5 anymore to get it. I just get it rolled over, and I do post it inside the kitchen and let everybody know that I do pay the room and meals tax. I probably, unlike some renters, and it really does vary from rental to rental, but I particularly separate the tax. So I literally make sure the customer knows they're paying the tax. Given that my rental is so high, a weekly rental is $7,900, so we're talking about an $800 tax. I want them to know that they're paying it, even though I'm passing it on. So it's my understanding that this is not, I'm not who you're trying to chase.
Absolutely not.
So that really gets down to the real question here, and with the semantics of who the operator is. So the issue is not so much home away and VRBO, because that's the business model that in my responsibility to collect the tax and pay the state. The business model that you're more concerned about is the Airbnb and flip key business model, which is, if the best way I can describe it to everybody, it's Uber, but for rentals. And that is that the operator, the happy homeowner, does not collect the money. Airbnb collects the money. And so therefore, they're the ones that you really are going after.
If I could further comment.
Yes.
My understanding is that Airbnb and Flipkey do not, well, you mean that they collect the rental, because they don't collect any tax.
They collect the rental. In other words, when you used Airbnb in New York, you gave Airbnb your credit card number, okay? So Airbnb collected the money, and so it's really their responsibility to then collect the tax because they're collecting the rent for the happy homeowner. In my case, HomeAway has no idea what I rented it for. HomeAway doesn't know, they don't know anything. All they know is that I pay them $700 a year and get my listings, and I'm done with them. They don't have anything to do with collecting money. So therefore, we have to look at that there are two different business models and how the business, so if I understand you correctly, we're not so worried about the VRBO HomeAway business model, because technically DRA can just go on the web page and they can see the property and they can look up the property and find out who the owner is and say, by the way, and they can then cross-check it and see that you're collecting the tax. So those business models are really exempt. What you're going after is the Airbnb and Flipkey, so that the definition needs to be for those internet operators who are collecting the rent. That's who you really want to go after, because you want them to then add the tax on top. Would you agree?
I don't know if I would agree, but I would love to discuss it further.
Didn't you guys do a study committee on this also?
No.
Oh, I thought this was a study committee.
No.
Okay. It was a study committee, but you weren't. Okay. We have lots of questions, so we'll start with...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question. I agree with the premise for your legislation. Get that out of the way. But I had a question from somebody at some point. Is there a fiscal cost to checking these things? I mean, is the DRA equipped to do this research and report, credibly and promptly?
If I could, I think that the DRA would like to participate in the subcommittee and to pursue these issues. The first response that I got from the DRA was they would love to be able to have access to information that would make it possible for them to know that people who should be paying their taxes are paying their taxes. And I think within the course of their general responsibilities, I don't think that they would look at, a list of 600 people who are renting and deal with all of those. But I think that they have the ability to examine as they would in the course of their usual work.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for presenting this bill to us. This may be a DRA question, but are you aware of a mechanism that would allow us to collect from? I know that there's a lot of issues around collecting taxes from internet operators in general, especially places that have sales tax. Is there a mechanism for us to collect from AirBnB if they choose not to pay, or any of the other providers?
That's a good question, and I think something that should be explored. It is true that I believe in California, excuse me, they have required that Airbnb collect the tax and submit the tax, and they are doing that. So I think it is possible.
My question was related to other New England states. Are they charging a tax to these entities or not?
I don't know that answer specifically.
Ironically, my summer home is in Rhode Island, and Rhode Island just woke up last year and realized that they hadn't been collecting any tax on summer rentals, and they just passed the law just this year to collect. They never crossed their minds, I guess.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the penalty, should be guilty of a misdemeanor. What level? Misdemeanor on page 2.
On page 2. Right. I don't know.
Okay, so some hands up on this side. Okay, are you all set? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair will call on Henry Bayou from the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association, who's in support of the bill.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Henry Bayou, and I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association, which is the trade association of hotels and restaurants. And we're here in support of the bill. I would state that we're not married to supporting any specific mechanism, but the concept of, but are supporting the concept of the state trying to do more to collect rooms and meals taxes on those entities that are providing short-term rentals. And the statute says that if you, rooms and meals tax statute says that if you rent the room for less than 180 days, it is subject to the rooms and meals tax. And so we would argue that there are folks out there that either aren't cognizant of it or just aren't complying with it. And as this phenomenon becomes bigger and bigger and starts to compete with the industry, I think we should have everyone on a level playing field. And so our interest is in getting the state to get those that aren't complying with the law to comply with the law. Whether it be the exact way that it's written in this bill, or as the chairman suggests, another method by going after those that actually collect the rental fee. Maybe that's a better mechanic. And there are other methods to go about it, but I guess we do support the effort to try to get those that aren't paying the tax to pay the tax. And that's it.
Let's pay the tax.
Yeah.
Any questions of Mr. Bayou? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. The chair will call on Mary Truell, from the Hampshire Association of Realtors, who is in opposition to the bill.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Mary Truell. My company is Truell Real Estate in Meredith, and I am here as the public policy chair for the New Hampshire Realtors Association. So as Chairman Hunt said, we are in opposition. However, we do agree with the concept behind the bill. And we think that something should move forward. We just do not think that this bill is the best approach to ensure that the short-term rentals, meet their obligations tax-wise. And I'm actually going to step away from what I have written for a second. If I could clarify a few things. I actually do HomeAway as well for my clients. And HomeAway has a way to process credit cards. And so in that manner, they do collect. They do collect all of the rent. They collect the tax. They even collect the security deposit. And then they send that to me, and I pay the rooms and meals tax on behalf of my clients. If I was just a regular homeowner, they would send it to me, and I would pay the rooms and meals tax. So, either way, as a real estate professional or as just a homeowner, the burden is on the property owner in New Hampshire. And that goes across all of the sites. AirBnB, they send the money directly into your account, and then it's your obligation to pay the rooms and meals tax. So when we're talking about how it says, apply to short-term rental businesses, regular homeowners on the street would be required to file as a short-term rental business, even if they only rent their house for 1 week a year, which a lot of people in my area during bike week, they, get the heck out of Dodge and just rent their property for 1 week a year. Most of them, I believe, do have a rooms and meals tax license, but this would add another burden that they would also have to register as a business, and so that's our hang up with it. We do think that it is only fair that everybody be paying the tax if they're renting their property, especially neighbors on the street. If one has a rooms and meals and one doesn't, that's obviously not fair. And we also want to point out that other similar approaches to this bill have been tried in other areas of the country, and it has had the unintended consequence of driving the transactions further underground, because the homeowner doesn't want to go through one more thing just to rent their house. And so instead of getting the rooms and meals license, which is fairly easy to do, they just say, the heck with it, I'm just going to rent it, who cares? So we like to take an approach to not make the requirements too burdensome to the property owners. We also are not sure that the avoidance of rooms and meals tax is that widespread in the state. I do not believe that the DRA audits have uncovered significant issues, but perhaps that would obviously be a question for them. And so while the intent of the bill is to target Airbnb and the actual internet marketing companies, we are really concerned about the burden on the homeowner. And it's actually a good thing for realtors, because the homeowner might say, I'm not going to do all this, I'm just going to list through a realtor, and we have the licenses and all this stuff. However, on public policy, we try to put the property rights and the homeowner first ahead of our own, commissions and that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, this bill would create a list of properties which would be liable for the tax. The DRA would have to do a lot of time-consuming sorting through this list, figuring out who is advertising, and even if somebody is advertising on Airbnb, that doesn't mean that they actually rented their house. It doesn't tell you that, and even if on HomeAway, it says all these weeks are blocked off, marked as rented. It could be the homeowner who's like, I have a family coming up that week. So you still don't know. So like I said, we agree with the intent of the bill, and we have an idea. And our suggestion is that if somebody is advertising on a short-term rental electronic, online business, that they would have to include their rooms and meals license number in the ad. So if they didn't have their license number in the ad and their neighbor down the street is snooping on them and says, hey, I have mine and I'm in compliance and you're not, or they're just upset that their neighbor is renting in the first place, they can then contact the DRA and say they don't have their rooms and meals license number on the ad, they might not even have one, can you check into this person? So it just seems to be a cleaner and less intrusive way to identify a potential tax burden. So we ask that you do not pass the bill in its current form, is what we're saying. And we would be more than willing to work with the committee on an alternative. However, if you do decide to pass the bill, we would want at the very least clarified that a real estate firm who acts as the operator only has to register with the Secretary of State once, because we've already done that, but not as a specific short-term rental business. And so it would just be on top of our regular business registration, we would have to do it again, and we don't really want to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming to testify. So how hard would it be to file a registration as a business in New Hampshire? Is it a big form? Is it more than 5 minutes worth of work?
Well, I mean, it's more that it's one more thing, and people value their time so much today.
You're saying it's less than 5 minutes worth of work?
Further question?
Sorry. You're saying it takes more than 5 minutes?
If they drive down here, it would, but I guess if you do it online, no, it maybe wouldn't. We registered with the Secretary. I'm sorry.
Let me help you out. No, it's easy to get a corporation, get a business, LLC. But you made another point that maybe is circling around back to this, that actually Representative Brother brought up. And that is the act of creating a business now gets the zoning board and neighbors who might not want you to be in this business claiming that you're running a business activity that is not permitted. So we really don't want anybody to have to require to get a business registration because you're opening up that zoning can of worms.
But isn't it a business?
Yeah. It's all a matter of perspective, whether you consider it a business or not. So, any other questions from the committee? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming to speak to us. So you would agree that the way that sleeping accommodations are laid out under 78A3, the beginning of this bill, without the modifications that existing law, that under that existing law, it pretty much defines any place where you can rent space for somebody to sleep as requiring rooms and meals tax. So you would agree that that part basically applies to the types of short-term rentals that you're talking about. You're just, you have an issue with the idea that those people need to register. Are you in support of the idea that that the internet agencies that collect the money for these rentals should be the taxpayers and not the individuals?
That is a really great idea, and I think it has been that the actual Airbnb pay the tax. I'm not sure if they have done that in other states.
Yeah, that was California.
California did it. As it stands right now in New Hampshire, though, that is not the case. The homeowner pays. So, and we think the homeowner should pay. Yes, we are in support of it still being, taxable. We just don't want them to have to register as a business.
Airbnb is in California, so they have Nexus, so that's part of why it
Yeah, they're
was,
in San Francisco.
Right.
that was easy for them to do it that way in California.
And that would
The
solve the
Nexus
problem
issue.
as well.
So I guess the other issue, just to get it out there so everyone follows this, that there is a certain advantage of having realtors having that one number. Because if you only rent once a year, 1 week a year, what a hassle it is, because DRA would require you to file every single month and say that you had no rentals, except for that 1 month you had. So that this is somewhat an advantage, that if a realtor is the one who's paying the tax and collecting the tax, then you're the only one, and you're gonna be doing that monthly filing. So the guess that begs the question, and this may be a question I wanna know from DRA, because I don't know how they handle someone who owns multiple restaurants, and whether they have to file for each separate restaurant, or can they file as one entity, one tax number?
They may file a consolidated return reporting all of the income on one return.
And you don't know, the only way you know whether there was multiple properties is you have to audit them.
We would know because they have to really supply us with whom they're reporting for, but they don't break it out by each individual business.
Each individual business would require a license though.
Right.
They would just file under one consolidated license.
They would file, okay, well then again, let's get this idea of this model, if we just had to put the room and meals number on the web page, that if it's, in other words, I'm gonna put my realtor's number on there. And then you're gonna see that number and say, oh, this is a realtor who has multiple listings. You're gonna require from them that they give you the list of all their customers. And you already have a system for that now?
Not necessarily a system, but upon audit, we would require such records, yes.
On audit, right, that's what I'm saying. You don't get
But
that.
in general administration, we do not require it now.
John,
Yeah,
I know that the private sponsor is not supposed to ask questions,
so
so
you can ask me this question.
I'm not asking questions. But you had said that we had studied this over the summer, and there was indeed a study committee. Didn't deal with the issues that are brought up by this bill, but did deal with the multiple listing for realtors. And so the bill that came out of that
It's
committee,
municipal.
right, is in municipal, and it requires, there's been consolidated submissions to DRA, but without detail, as they had talked about, for lodging places like that rent for 1 week a year or whatever. But the bill that comes out of the study committee would require that, although there's a consolidated bill, that the properties would be individually listed.
All right, good. That solves that question, yes.
A question, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a question for you. Do you, I mean, we've talked about having to register as a business as being do you need to register as a business in order to get a rooms and meals license number?
Probably not.
So does this bill require you to register as a business?
This bill, the awkwardness of this bill is that, yeah, you're gonna have to, it requires double filing.
Okay.
So, yes, that is, for some of us, that might be a little offending, given that we're already there, we've already done it, we're good cookie, we're good puppies, why are we having to create a whole new bureaucracy? So, in that sense, that is a problem.
May I ask you a
Yes,
quick
Representative Sandberg.
Do you think this would have any negative impact on the real estate market? So if I'm a consumer, I'm looking for a new second home, why would I choose New Hampshire if I have to now register my property that I might want to rent it out from time to time when I'm not there? Wouldn't that be a deterrent for the real estate market?
I mean, if we were saying that, no, you could never rent it out. But I don't think it would be that much. It might have some impact, knowing that you have to go through all these hoops to get there.
Would you believe that it would make an impact on me? I would be
Yeah.
looking at
Okay, well, I can assure you that every state has this law. Now that Rhode Island woke up.
That other bill is in Ways and Means.
Oh, Ways and Means.
The one where you have
Okay.
to write down all of the addresses.
All the addresses. Ways and Means has that. Okay. Great. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, I have one card left. Ian Freeman for the New Hampshire Liberty Party.
Good morning. I've heard some disturbing things here this morning. The idea that someone would be charged with a misdemeanor, possibly facing up to a year in jail because they just wanted to rent out a room to somebody in their home. That's pretty scary. We're going to have the police doing sting operations against homeowners now to verify what the case is as far as whether or not they've had their permission slip from the government. I heard about leveling the playing field. And it would seem to me that if we wanted to level the playing field, the right way to do that in the live free or die state is to get rid of regulations, to set the the people who own these various different rental properties, whether they be short-term or long-term or whatever, set them free from the state regulations and controls. We don't need to be adding in more controls. We don't need more threats. We don't need more jail time. We already have enough people in jail in New Hampshire who have never actually hurt anybody else. So, I mean, I'm sorry to the hotel owners and the motel owners who have been regulated for decades in this state. That needs to stop. That's the true level playing field, not creating more bureaucracy, not creating more laws and more regulations. Further, I think that the system is also self-regulating. There's obviously going to be the concern, well, what about bed bugs? What about, dirty sheets? What about this and that? You've got a self-regulating system with these Airbnbs and the Ubers and all of that, where if there's a bad experience that someone has, they leave negative reputation. The customer can leave a rating, and then nobody's going to want to go and sleep where somebody got bed bugs. So that's taken care of. We don't need the state. The marketplace is advancing faster than the state can catch up with it. So please don't hurt these poor homeowners who are just trying to make a few extra bucks on a weekend or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you. I would venture to guess that we would all agree with you. That's a great idea if we could repeal the rooms tax.
You could.
Together, but I don't think anybody would argue with that. I think it's probably a lot of money on the table that we would have to find from some other source.
Well, you could just shut down more of the bureaucracy, and then you wouldn't need as much money coming in, right? Thank you.
We love it. Okay.
Any questions?
Seeing that, thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, does the department, you didn't put a card in, or
If you'd like us-
anybody have some questions, maybe if you don't mind coming up and doing that back there, I think we might make sure we pick up all those things here. This is Department of Administration. We'll fill out, you just hand in the card. Good morning. Is there anything here today that spurred any comments that you would like to make before we take
Good
any
morning,
questions?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John Whitehall for the Department of Revenue, and with me is Melissa Rollins, who did the fiscal analysis. We'd like to echo the words of Representative Butler that we would be a very willing participant in any subcommittee to perfect the bill so that it pleases as many as possible. There are, as been pointed out by several of the people who testified, a few bottlenecks and things that should be changed. Beyond that, the activity is currently taxable. So they should be filing. The homeowner is not necessarily the operator. The operator can be a real estate company that they register with, they have a contractor, what understanding, and they are liable for payment. Would it benefit the department to have some more detail of who is renting the thing? Yes, it certainly would. Would you have anything to add?
You covered it. It's definitely a challenge for the DRA to find these rentals. I mean, we only have so much manpower to go in and, looking at the internet to try to find, did they rent? And like you said, it's blocked off, but does that mean they actually rented out the property? So that does give the DRA faces a lot of challenges trying to overcome that.
Okay, we do have questions, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. If if it's already currently enforceable and people have to pay this, why do we need a bill? Take your
You
time.
would have to actually represent the person who sponsored the bill.
And I'd be happy to talk to you about that later.
Yeah, I can interject. There's no doubt Airbnb is a problem. Because Airbnb, in one way it's a little easier because there's a field in there that says collect the sales tax. I don't do Airbnb, I don't know, but I would venture to say that there are many Airbnb that they're not, the tax is not getting collected.
Question for the chair.
Yes.
So they're currently supposed to already pay it. I'm just trying, I understand the intent of the bill, and I get that. I'm just trying to figure out if it's already the law that they're supposed to comply. If we make another law, how's that gonna make them comply?
This law, well, basically, this law would be able to make it easier for the DRA to be able to enforce the law. So it's about, yes, there is a law, and how do they enforce it? How are you gonna make it so that they can actually make sure that everybody's paying their fair share? So the question is this a classic case of, we want a law, how do we make it enforceable? And the question was, this law is having a problem with enforcement.
Follow up for the chair?
Yeah.
So people are committing misdemeanors currently, breaking the law, and we're going to require them to register so they know that.
I think we're all pretty much agreed that that's a bad idea.
Okay.
It's actually just a violation to not pay.
It's not a
Current law
misdemeanor?
is just a violation.
It's just a violation.
And I will say is that the DRA will bend over backwards to help you get back on your feet, and help you, if you, sort of like, the amnesty program, like some states have an amnesty, there's always an amnesty in DRA when it comes to this tax. That if you just woke up one day and realized that you were supposed to be collecting it, they will work with you to resolve it without having you pay the tax. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming to speak to us. So I guess my question kind of relates to this discussion. Is there a mechanism for you to collect money from companies like Airbnb, since they are not domiciled in New Hampshire, have no direct business relationship here?
We would pursue them the same way that we would any other operator, soon-to-be operator that is not currently registered, by contacting them. I believe on a lot of those websites, though, it does state that the homeowner, or whoever is renting them out, is responsible for paying the tax versus the Airbnb's collecting the tax. So it wouldn't, we have had challenges with that and have had to go after some of those people, or at least find them and, explain to them that they are responsible for the tax. But I think it would be the same process as what we're currently doing.
For the question and inquiry.
But have you got an example where you've been able to pursue an internet-based business that's not, doesn't have a New Hampshire brick and mortar relationship or employees in New Hampshire successfully in terms of collecting tax in anything? Not just rooms and meals tax, but any kinds of tax?
The tax is on the consumer. So that is the responsibility of either the operator or the homeowner. If they're not registered as an operator, we might cause them to be. I believe the purpose of this bill is to strengthen that and make them become operators.
You said taxes on the consumer.
Yes. The operators are merely agents for the state. They're not personally liable for it.
So the consumer being the homeowner.
No.
The renter.
Well, because I would say there's one other thing that helped everybody visualize how this all works, okay? And that is that when you pay the tax, there's two ways to pay this tax. One is you say, this is how much rent I've collected, and there's a 9% tax to it, okay? Now, let's say you didn't do that. Let's say you were Airbnb, and all they did is Airbnb sends me that $200 back from what the rent was. At that point, when I file with DRA, is I'm going to say the 200, and then they're going to do an 8% multiplier. So now I'm going to pay the 8% of that 200 that I owe the state. So at the end of the day, you'll get your money, whether the money was rolled up into the rent or whether it was added separately, you have a mechanism to make it easy for somebody who didn't do the tax on top, that simply takes the check from Airbnb, reports how much money they got back, 8% of that, and then that's the tax that they pay.
Tax included versus tax stated.
And you get a commission. Which I made almost $400 last year on commission.
If it's timely filed and paid.
So I just want to say that there is a way to do it. So I guess my question would be is that this idea of just posting your room and meals tax number on your web page, making that an obligation. That obviously that the enforcement mechanism now is whether you troll through and see whether they're there or not, or that somebody drops a dime on them and say, oh look, they didn't get it, and then now you would go there. So I guess my question is does that seem like a good, simple solution? And B is, how much can you tell us about what you guys are doing now?
Well, we can't tell you everything, obviously, but it seems a good idea on the surface, but what is to prevent anyone from using someone else's number once they see it posted? And we would still have to dig to find out whether that's true or not, and apply to that property.
Okay, Representative Williams.
So I just want to try one more time with this question. If this bill passes as written, although I agree with you that the tax is supposed to be paid by the renter, this bill basically specifies that the website would be considered the operator responsible for collecting the tax. So it would actually exempt anybody who was renting a property through one of these systems. It would require instead the website to collect it. So my question is, has the state of New Hampshire been successful in collecting the taxes in any way, shape, or form from website-only businesses where there's no physical entity in the state?
I'm not a member of the audit division, and if there were fewer than 10, I couldn't disclose the answer to you if I knew it. I'm sorry, but I don't have that information.
Representative Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not really sure exactly what the room and meals tax is supposed to cover. I mean, I have a 9-year-old son, and when he turns 18, I plan to charge him rent. So, yeah.
As long as it's long term.
Right. So is that, it's a two-part question. Is that required, because it's not public offering, it's within the family, it's a private offering in a sense. But I have, my wife actually answered an ad for her mother's rental unit with a roommate, and she charged her rent. And that would be a public offering. So they're two separate examples. How would they be addressed in New
Your son
Hampshire?
would hopefully be a long-term renter, more than 180?
No, short term. Week to week, actually.
More than 183 days.
Okay.
85 days. But is the other one actually a taxable event? Yes.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
180 days is kind of interesting the way the law is written, because it says, if you think about some of these motels that have long-term stays,
Right.
so you collect the money all the way up to the 180th day, and then after the 180 days, you're supposed to refund all the tax back if they stay beyond the 180 days. So, this is a very sophisticated law. They've worked
Yeah,
this law.
that's why it is.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Biggs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the penalty, I seem to have this question about the misdemeanor on page 292. Who actually brings the misdemeanor charges?
That would be a good question, since we do not really administer RSA 353.
Wow.
This is two different sections. You have the 78,
My apologies.
section
Yeah.
I
78.
see.
This is on the consumer.
Right.
The Attorney General currently is the one that brings those charges forward.
Right, so that's the reason why we don't want to do licensure, because then we'll have to worry about whether we have to exempt them from the Consumer Protection Act. Thank you very much for your testimony. Chair will call on Conan and I, who's in opposition to the bill.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I am in opposition of the whole bill, but especially the inclusion of operator to mean just anybody. I'd really like if you guys would stay out of my house and out of my life, and if the true battle is with Airbnb, I wish it would come right out and say that we are opposed to the online rental collectors. But this opens a real can of worms for property owners, maybe like myself, who wants to rent out the room to my daughter for the summer, like this gentleman, for short term. As far as the property being used as a rental, if it becomes a problem, most towns and cities have ordinances already in place to attack people who are rowdy or parking their cars all over the place or causing a disturbance. So the cities and towns are already taking care of that type of situation. I think the gentleman who brought this bill to us really laid it out, plain and simple. This is about competition. This is about little guys like myself who may be making a few bucks on the side, bringing it to the man, and he's wanting to collect on the loss revenue. So I think that we need to get down to the bottom. This is about competition. This is about lost tax revenue, and we live in a time where the people are trying to make ends meet, and they might not necessarily want to send it to you guys because maybe we don't think you're spending it very wisely. And as far as competition is concerned, you brought up the Uber. Uber is a prime example of competition, good competition, driving out an old system that is failing us. The ability to pick and choose where I want to stay for maybe a lower price, I want to be able to have that opportunity. And systems like Airbnb are a prime example of systems that I want to succeed. I don't want them driven underground. I don't want them driven out of the country or driven wherever. I want them to be able to have their time in the sun. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none? Thank you very much. Anybody else who would like to speak on House Bill 1590? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.